Hey everybody, today I want to talk about not my website. I'm not trying to sell any records. This is just a good old-fashioned top 10 video. And today's top 10 video is going to be my top 10 favorite Beach Boys albums. Now, a bunch of people have been asking me in the comments to make some videos about the Beach Boys albums. And for those of you who don't know, I love the Beach Boys. The Beach Boys, probably right behind the Beatles and Bob Dylan, the Beach Boys are just one of my all-time favorite bands. Huge influence on my musical career, whatever you want to call it, playing music, writing music, just listening to music. The Beach Boys are just so important to me. Obviously, you can see I have a Smile poster up on my wall here, and I just adore the Beach Boys. Brian Wilson, Carl Wilson, Dennis Wilson, Mike Love, Al Jardine, Bruce Johnston, all the Beach Boys. So these are my top 10 favorite Beach Boys albums. Some of these might surprise you. You'll probably get a good idea of my favorite time period of the Beach Boys. And here we go. Let's start it off. So number 10, and it's already off to kind of an interesting start. This is the Beach Boys' LA Light album. Now, this is an album that I think a lot of people kind of gloss over, but I love it. In my opinion, this is one of the last Beach Boys albums that had the major influence of the Wilson brothers, and in this case, Carl and Dennis. And this album has some amazing songs that a lot of people just don't really know about. To me, I think the biggest song from this album probably was the song Good Timin'. Good Timin' was, I think, kind of a hit for the Beach Boys. But my favorite songs on this album, like I said, are the ones by Carl and Dennis. Like Baby Blue is amazing. Going South is unbelievable. Love Surrounds Me and Angel Come Home. Those two songs are my favorite. They tie for my favorites on this album. And then there are some other songs on here that are kind of weird, that I don't really like too much. There's a disco remake of a song called Here Comes the Night, which was originally on the Wild Honey album, and I'm not that into that. There's this song called Lady Linda, which is like a weird, like, classical song that Al Jardine tried to put words to. It's also weird. And then there's Shortened and Bread on here, which is just Brian Wilson being Brian Wilson, and it's just kind of another kind of weird one. But besides those songs, this is a really excellent album. Really cool songs. And like I said, it's kind of the last hurrah when it comes to the original Beach Boys before they got all into being just strictly a nostalgic act. And this album came out, I gotta look it up here, the year. This came out in 1979. And it's on, this pressing I have is on the Brother Caribou Records label, which is pretty cool. And I just love this album. It's always been one of my favorites, and I listen to it quite often, especially the songs like Full Sail, Love Surrounds Me, As the Motorcycle Goes whizzing by. It's Saturday afternoon here, and I live on a main street, and a lot of motorcycles like to go whizzing by, so it's all good. Okay, so that's the Beach Boys' LA Light album. That was number 10. So number 9, this is the Beach Boys album called Holland. Holland, I love this record. The big song from this is a song called Sail On Sailor, which is just phenomenal. It has, on lead vocals, it has Blondie Chaplin. And so the Beach Boys in the mid-70s, they recruited 2 other people to be in their band, and they were Ricky Fataar, and Ricky Fataar later went to play guitar in the Ruddles, but in the Beach Boys he played drums. And then Blondie Chaplin, who went on to be in the Rolling Stones as a just kind of an extra member there for their touring band. But for the Beach Boys, they played key roles. And on Sail On Sailor, Blondie takes the lead vocal, and he sounds absolutely fantastic. This album, it's a bit of a concept album. So they went to Holland to record these songs, and they actually got really homesick. So the album has a lot of California influence in it, and there's a whole kind of medley going on here called the California Saga that Al Jardine and Mike Love kind of put together, and it's very good. And in fact, I'm not a big fan of Mike Love. I will just come right out and say that. I think Mike Love is kind of a bit of a not a very classy character when it comes to the Beach Boys story. But one of my favorite songs that he does and that he wrote is on here, and it's called Big Sur. I think that's a really, really cool song. So this is just a really great album. If you haven't heard it, recommend it highly. This is the Beach Boys' Holland album. Now, number 8. This is an album by the Beach Boys called 2020. And it has a bunch of excellent, excellent songs. This was the last album, actually not the last, but it's one of the last albums. Actually, no, I think it is. It might be the last album they released on Capitol Records. And this happens to be a German pressing of this album. This album has a lot of kind of just songs that were left over from their 1960s period, but also some new songs, some kind of singles and B-sides they just kind of put together to make an album. But it works really, really well. And it's got a cool gatefold. It actually has like a gatefold that folds out like this, and you get Brian Wilson and you get an eye chart, which is kind of weird. But it has the song Do It Again, which was a big hit. Has the song I Can Hear Music, which is just absolutely beautiful. Bluebirds Over the Mountain is a cool rock song. It has a song called I Went to Sleep, which is an amazing Brian Wilson song. Time to Get Alone is amazing. And then it has 2 songs from the abandoned Smile album. Songs Cabanescence and Our Prayer. Both great songs that I will be talking about later in this list. So this is number 8, 2020. Now, number 7. This is an album that I absolutely love. This is an album called Wild Honey by the Beach Boys. Now, this was put out in, I think it's 1967, I believe, 67, 68. And this came out right after they put out an album called Smiley Smile, which was songs that were taken from the Smile sessions that they actually redid just to put out an album very, very quickly. And that was kind of... album had a lot of mixed reviews. I actually personally like that album a lot. But this album came out right after that, and it's really, really a cool, cool record. It's the Beach Boys basically trying to make like a soul R&B record, and it's very cool, very weird, and has 2 songs that were definite Beach Boys classics. Wild Honey, the title song, and a song called Darlin', which is just one of my all-time favorite songs. In fact, it's one of my wife's favorite songs as well. And for our wedding, after the song that we walked out of the church to was Darlin'. That's how much we love that song. It's just a brilliant, brilliant song. And this is just a very, very cool, cool album. So Wild Honey, excellent, excellent album. I got to count backwards here if I can do that. So we got 10, 9, 8, 7. Here is number 6. This is an album by the Beach Boys called Surf's Up. I absolutely love this record. It is so fantastic. This is released, I think, in 1972, if I'm not mistaken. If I can find a date on here. I can't at the moment. My Beach Boy knowledge is definitely not as sharp as my Beatles knowledge. I can tell you almost any date when it comes to Beatles albums. Can't find a date on here, so I think it's around 71, 72 is when this album came out. But this is just a fantastic album, and again, this is an album that really Carl Wilson and Dennis Wilson played a big, big part in this album, because at the time Brian Wilson wasn't really able to make that much music, although he did contribute to this album with songs like Till I Die, which is an absolutely beautiful, breathtaking song. And of course his song Surf's Up, which is another song that was left over from the Smile sessions that his brother Carl Wilson took the master tape out and added some overdubs to, and they put it on this album, and it's just amazing. One of the best Beach Boys songs ever, Surf's Up. If you've never heard Surf's Up, stop this video, find some way to listen to it, either on YouTube, on Spotify, whatever, listen to it. It will blow your mind. It's so good. Other great songs in this album are songs Long Promised Road, which is a Carl Wilson song, excellent. A song called Disney Girls, which is a song that Bruce Johnston wrote and sings on this album, very good. Feel Flows is another excellent song that Carl Wilson contributed. Just a great, great album. So Surf's Up by the Beach Boys is definitely worth checking out. And there's some light coming in here, I see, but we'll just deal with it. Okay, I keep losing my track here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is album number 4 on my list. This is a weird one, and I bet some of you who like the Beach Boys are probably shaking your head, or some of you are going like, yes, right on. This is an album called The Beach Boys Love You. Now, this is basically a Brian Wilson solo album, and this is a later Beach Boys album. This was released in 1977, and it's a super, super weird, quirky album. Has a lot of like Moog synthesizer stuff going on. Brian Wilson basically plays all the instruments on this album, and he sings most of the songs as well. Gets a little bit of help from his brothers Carl and Dennis, and I think Mike Love also sings on a song on here, and Al sings one song as well. But it's got some great songs, weird songs, but so good. When I first heard this album, the first time I listened to it, I didn't know what to make of it. Then the more I listened to it, the more I found myself going, wait, I think I love this album. And I do. I listen to this album so much. It's got, the melodies are just brilliant. Brian Wilson's words are so weird, but like so charming at the same time. It's got a song on here that is one of my all-time favorite songs. It's called The Night Was So Young. Carl Wilson sings it. It's brilliant. There's another song on here called Let's Put Our Hearts Together that Brian sings as a duet with his wife, and they were just about to get divorced. It's like crazy. But Beach Boys Love You, definitely worth checking out. Definitely a weird one, but I love it so much. So check this one out. Number 3. Actually, no, I'm a little bit off. Number 4. So this was number 5, Love You. Number 4 is this Beach Boys album. This is Smile. This is the original Smile album. Now, this album was recorded in 1966, was supposed to be released in 1967. Famously, of course, Brian Wilson at the last minute decided he didn't want to release it. It was locked away, and for over 40 years, this was a legendary album that everyone wanted to hear, and the only way you could hear it was like bootleg recordings that were not that great. And then magically, about, I guess now it's like 10 or 15 years ago, they finally released it as it was, basically. So some of the songs are not finished, but this is just an absolutely brilliant album. And like Love You, the Beach Boys Love You, at first it's hard to get into. I can definitely understand. There are a lot of people I meet who say, I just don't understand the Smile album. It doesn't make sense to me. But I always tell them it's an album that you need to listen to a couple of times. And once you absorb it all, it is so rewarding. It's so fascinating. These songs are complex. Brian Wilson was doing things during these sessions that were just so advanced. I mean, he was like taking songs, recording just little bits of songs, cutting them up, putting them all together, and just doing amazing things. Basically, it's like the song Good Vibrations. If you like Good Vibrations, this is just an album full of songs that are like Good Vibrations. Little pieces put together to make a whole thing. And it's so wonderful. I can't praise this album enough. I love it so much. It's just a brilliant record. So much so that I have the poster up here that comes with the box set on the wall. My wife and I both love Smile, and that poster inspires us every single day. So Beach Boys Smile, definitely worth checking out if you have not checked it out. Now, number 3. This album was a game changer for me. This is the Beach Boys album called Friends. This is released in 1968. And Brian Wilson, when he was asked what's your favorite Beach Boys album, he said Friends is his favorite Beach Boys album, and I totally understand why. The songs on here are so great, and the mood of this album is so relaxing. It's so mellow, and this is a record you put on if you're having a bad day, if you're maybe not, you're sick, you have a cold or something. You put this on, and this will relax you. This is a life-changing album in every sense of the word, And when I first heard this record, I played it, after the first time I heard it, I listened to it over and over and over again, probably for like 3 years straight. I would listen to this at least once a week. When I was in college, I have a really, really fond memory of driving up to see a friend. At the time I lived in Southern California. I drove from Southern California all the way up to San Francisco, and I took Highway 1, which goes through, it's just a beautiful drive for those of you who don't know. Highway 1 goes all along the coast of California. It goes up through Big Sur. Big Sur is one of the most breathtaking and beautiful places you could ever experience in your life. I recommend trying to get out to Big Sur if you can. Drove through there, and the whole time I had friends playing. I had the CD in my car. I played it the whole trip, and it was so beautiful. I constantly go back to that moment in my life when I was hearing this album, driving through Big Sur. It's one of my most fond memories, and this album just means so much to me. The harmonies on here are perfect. The songs are amazing, and this is an album that gets way, way overlooked, in my opinion. And it's just a brilliant, brilliant record. And in my opinion, this is Brian Wilson's one of his last kind of perfect records, where he was in charge still, and was a big, big influence. So this is the Beach Boys' Friends album. Recommend it highly. Another record that I discovered around the same time period. This is my Beach Boys album number 2. This is an album called Sunflower. Now this is a record that, in my opinion, is perfect. Every song on here is excellent. Recorded, the recording quality in this album is also another thing to talk about. Their producer, or their engineer at the time, was a guy named Steven Desper, and the way he recorded this album, they actually talk about it on the back of this, is every single instrument and vocal was recorded in true stereo. So the way I can describe this is, normally when you record, like when the Beatles recorded, right? When they would record the snare drum, they had one microphone, motorcycle, they had one microphone that would record the snare drum, right? And that microphone was just in mono, so you just got the mono, just that one sound going through that microphone to pick up the snare drum, which is fine. That's brilliant. That's how almost everything in the world has ever been recorded. Great way to record. On this album, they recorded everything in stereo with stereo microphones. So instead of having just one microphone on the snare, they had a microphone that was having a left and a right. So it would pick up all the sound around the instrument as well. And that makes this album very unique. It has a very unique sound, has a very full sound. It's just mixed perfectly. I love it so much. And it has my all-time favorite Beach Boys song on here. And it's hard for me to pick a favorite Beach Boys song, but I have about 3 that are always in my in the running for number 1. And this has one of them, and it's a song called This Whole World. And This Whole World is a perfect song, in my opinion. If you're a musician and you are interested in songwriting, listen to the chords of This Whole World. If you play guitar or piano or whatever, try to play this song, and it will blow your mind. The song modulates all over the place. All the chords shouldn't work together, but they do. This is Brian Wilson at his absolutely most brilliant, in my opinion. Check out this album. By the way, the whole album has songs that are amazing, so I'm just talking about that one song, but this is a fantastic record, and I can't recommend it enough. This, by the way, this came out in 1970. It's their first album on Warner Reprise, and it's just great. So definitely check out Sunflower. And I assume most of you know that this next, my number 1 Beach Boys album should come as no surprise. It is the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds album. Now, I don't really know what I can say about this album that I haven't already said in my other videos. All I can say is this album changed my life in so many ways. First time I heard this record, I heard the CD of it, and my local library, I think I've talked about this before, but I'll just say it really quickly here. My local library had CDs that you could rent or you could check out just like books, and they had a great selection of CDs. I don't know how they got their CDs or why they chose to have the ones they had, but they had great stuff. And I got Pet Sounds just because I liked the Beach Boys, but I'd heard about Pet Sounds, I never heard it, actually the whole album. Brought it home, listened to it, and to say that it had an impact on me is an understatement, because from the very first guitar notes of the first song, Wouldn't It Be Nice, I was hooked. This was one of the best things I'd ever heard in my life. And I'm talking about, this is on par with the first time I heard like Beatles songs. And the Beatles obviously are my number one band, and the Beatles changed my life in every aspect. But this album, Pet Sounds, did the same thing, and it's that important. And anytime I put anything up with the Beatles, that's top notch. And Pet Sounds was that album for me. I love this record so much. Obviously, when I met my wife, she had so many other qualities that were great. But one of the big things that we really, really clicked on was Pet Sounds. In fact, when I called her, for the first time when I called her on the phone, this is before we were dating or anything, hadn't even met her in person yet, but I had to call her on the phone because we were going to meet up. And this is back when cell phones, you could have like when you called someone, you could have like a playback song, when you called them. So instead of hearing like just the dial tone, it would play a song. So I called her number, and the song that played was a song from Pet Sounds, and it was actually an outtake from Pet Sounds, which is even cooler. A song called Hang On To Your Ego, which on the album they changed the words to I Know There's an Answer. But that was the song I was playing, and I remember being like, who has this as their dial tone, their whatever, their ringtone, and it just blew me away. And we immediately connected on Pet Sounds, and it's just a really special album. And in fact, we walked down the aisle. She walked down the aisle to God Only Knows, which God Only Knows, by the way, is another of my all-time favorite Beach Boys songs. It's, when I say I have three that are my all-time favorites, it's This Whole World from Sunflower, God Only Knows, and Surf's Up. Those are my three favorite Beach Boys songs. They're all tied for my favorite. And yeah, I mean, if you haven't heard Pet Sounds by now, what are you doing? Go out, buy it. You can pick this exact pressing up. This is the stereo pressing of Pet Sounds. You can get this, I think, for like $20 at Barnes & Noble. It's an album that I think everyone should listen to at least once in their life. And because I think if you listen to it once, you'll realize how beautiful and how perfect it is. It's so good. Anyway, those are my top 10 Beach Boys albums, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what your top 10 would be. I'd be curious to know. Maybe you're saying, how could he have forgotten this album or that album? And I'm sure, by the way, I love almost everything the Beach Boys did, so it's hard to make a top 10, but these are the ones that I just love and I couldn't live without. So please let me know what your top 10 would be, and stay tuned for more videos. So that's it for now, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.